watching the AM show. Now, a volatile and closely fought contest is shaping up in the New Patriotic Party's presidential primaries, with fresh polling revealing a race that is far from settled. A nationwide delegate-based opinion poll by the Center for Public Opinion and Awareness, CenPOA, shows Vice President Dr. Bawumia leading the field with 42% of stated voting intentions, but falling short of the numbers needed for a decisive first-round victory. Well, with nearly 1 in 5 delegates still undecided and more than a quarter open to switching sides, the poll points to a fluid race in which loyalty, momentum, and perceived electability could prove decisiveness. Now, the findings suggest that while Dr. Bawumia enters as the fourth runner, his grip on the contest is quite fragile, and that the challenger, Kennedy Agyapong, buoyed by a more loyal base, remains firmly in contention as the party heads towards what could be a runoff. Now, joining me in studio this morning to break down this poll is Michael Donyina-Mensah. He is Executive Director, CenPOA. Thank you for joining us. We've seen many polls leading to this particular election. I mean, it's not novel. But first of all, I see what you do, but why did you particularly conduct a poll on this one?
All right, thank you very much. I think I would start from the narrative that the quality of leadership in Ghana has been dwindling over the years. I mean, in fact, if you look at from the days of Nkrumah till now, it is something that we all know that the quality of leadership is dwindling. And with NPP being one of the major political parties, and considering the fact that in Ghana we have what we call the incumbent penalty, which no political party has been able to, avoid. I think the NPP tried to avoid it by attempting to break the 8, but that failed. So it is very obvious that at least in the next possibly 8 years, we should be seeing a change in government. And if NPP is the alternative, that means that the quality of leadership that they present is what is going to, it's what Ghana will be going with into the future. So it's very important that we show some interest. So it's from that angle that we decided to do this particular survey. And the intention of the survey was not to, predict exactly who's going to win. That is really not our focus. Of course, that could be one. People can actually preempt that from the report, but the focus was to be able to establish the trends and the dynamics of the whole race, because that would give an idea of how things will pan out at the end. So yes, this is the reason why we actually went into it, to see that we're able to guide some of the narratives around how leadership is panning out in Ghana.
Okay, but if I look at the poll, it seems to pay attention to who is popular, who's more marketable, who gets to maybe, or whether or not this will get it to a runoff. If we're curing what you have just said, why does the poll not then focus on their person, who they are, so that delegates are able to make an informed decision, especially because of what you want to cure?
Yes, so it's a study. We were looking at the dynamics and of the race, considering the previous race. And so if you look at the research questions, the research questions actually guided this whole survey. And it was looking at who did you vote for in 2023? Would you still vote for the same person this year? And would you change your vote at any point in time? So it is just to understand the dynamics of the vote. But of course, we didn't focus on the personalities of the individuals, because that is a very qualitative subject area to delve into. So we just delve more into the quantitative side.
Okay, talking about quantitative, then it introduces me to the sample size. How well is the data represented? What kind of sample size did you use? Well,
so we covered 55 constituencies, and we feel that that is actually very representative enough.
Why?
And 55 of 270, that's almost well about 20%. And usually we've had sample sizes of 3%, which seems to be very representative enough. So it was way above what should be minimum. And of course, it was spread across the 16 regions. So,
Okay.
so it was representative enough. And then we went well above, I think, 1.5% of the delegates. So we had about 2,792 potential delegates responding to the survey, whose, responses were used to do the analysis. And yes, at the end of the day, Dr. Bawumia seemed to be the most popular candidate. He pulled 42% of the responses of those who wanted to vote for him, followed by Honorable Kennedy Agyapong, 34%. So there's actually an 8-point lead on the side of Dr. Bawumia.
Dr. Bawumia, okay.
Yes, and then we have significantly something very important. We didn't focus on much of the other candidates because if they had, some of them had very reasonable, significant numbers, then we can bring them into the analysis. If not, then we would really be making it a bit crowded. So we focused on the leading two. But we had about 1/5 of the delegates saying that they were undecided. And that was really very interesting because going into the last days of this contest, because our last data came in on the 9th of January. So as at 9th of January, if we have these number of delegates saying that they were undecided, it means that...
What number again did you say?
About 17% undecided. So that meant that there's still some virgin field that both of these leading candidates can actually capitalize on. One other factor was attrition.
Before you go to the attrition, these are 17%. The most marketable person, if they get, what margin do they need out of the 17% to make them have a firm grip?
Well, it then spans that Dr. Bawumia needs just about half of...
Just half of that?
That's 17%.
And then the...
So half of the undecided voters, if Dr. Bawumia is able to, sweep half of the undecided voters, it means that, yes...
If all the 17% decide to want to go to Ken, would they also...
So that's going to be a problem.
A problem for the front runner.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
So that's basically. So it looks like there's still a number of people who are still sitting on the flanks. So these last days can really make a difference, and that's the reason why we're looking at it from the point that the possibility of a runoff is something that is on the table.
Okay, Dr. Bawumia has 42% so far marketable. You also say that Kennedy seemed to have a firm grip of the base.
Yeah, so that's
I want to get the...
So the dynamics is that about 81% of those who said they voted for Ken in 2023 are saying that they will vote for him again. And
about 21%?
81%.
81.
And then,
that's large.
Yes, that's large. And for that's about 67%. Though in absolute numbers, when you bring it to absolute numbers, Dr. Bawumia's numbers might be larger than that of Ken because he got more votes in the last. But in terms of loyalty, Ken has a more solid loyalty base than Dr. Bawumia. That sometimes, that can be explained a little bit because, in the last primaries, he had some people with him who are no more with him. Dr. Duchum, Dr. Brian Agyapong. So all of them slid away, and of course they will slide away with their numbers. But as to whether these numbers on the election day are going to come back to the Bawumia camp will be a little bit of a problem. One thing we know about some of these elections is that during the campaign period, you get a lot of people following certain candidates. But when it comes to the D-Day for the voting, people want to align with winnable candidates. And that's the reason why sometimes you see someone getting zero, having a lot of people follow them during their campaign, but they get zero at certain polling stations, because when it comes to the election day, people want to realign and align with winnable candidates. As to those who have left Dr. Bawumia's camp, as to whether they're going to return back to him is another case. If they decide to go towards the direction of Ken, then so this particular election is not like the previous primaries that we've seen before, because if we were going to go by history, history would have been very fair to Dr. Bawumia, because in the history of the NPP, no first-time presidential candidate has ever polled up to 60%, more than 60% of the vote.
Okay.
But in the last primaries, he had 61. So, and then history also tells us that in every second showing, the presidential candidates actually do better. But is that going to be the case in this particular situation? The dynamics, so history actually is on the side of Dr. Bawumia, but whether that would be in reality, we're yet to see.
In the bigger picture for subsequent elections, which is the most important thing every party should concern themselves with, which one is most needed? A marketable candidate or candidate that members are loyal to?
So if you look at the survey, that question actually popped up, and we have about 34% saying that they are looking for a marketable candidate, someone who can actually, let's call it a winnable candidate. So yes, on that front, at the winnable candidate that they are looking at, we are yet to see who is going to be that winnable candidate. But there's something interesting happening in this particular primaries that I think that it has a very important, it's a reflection of how citizens and leaders, the whole congruence and how they are viewing leadership. We can see there's a very sudden drift to Honorable Kennedy Agyapong. And if you look at if you monitor some of the comments that are coming from people, it is not because they feel he is the most ideal leader that Ghana wants or Ghana needs. Let me say, it is much more in the direction of they want to try something new. It is just to tell us that the citizens are becoming very fed up or tired with the aristocratic leaders. And I've said it somewhere that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is the last of a dying breed. And when I say the last of a dying breed, what I mean was that just because of what happened in the last 8 years, people were so disappointed in the political class, such that there was a point that even the youth were clamoring for military rule. That meant that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is trying to restore some hope back into that political class for us to start believing them that they can do something.
If he does, from history and research, if he does, will the people who seem to want to have an appetite for a new kind of regime, would they still have that appetite? So
that's the thing. So if His Excellency John Dramani Mahama does excellently well, such that that hope is restored, then that whole experiment of Ken Agyapong is threatened. I'm telling you this, and we can mark it here and probably in the future. If His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, in his term of governance, unfortunately, commit some of the errors that were committed in the past, and then citizens begin to lose that hope back again, that puts someone like Kennedy Agyapong in a very good picture, in case he's able to make it past this
But it matters who wins to just January 31, right? Because as of now, how are they able to predict whether or not the current presidents will do well or not? So what kind of a candidate can they have that can best suit when the president doesn't perform well? And what kind of candidates can they have that can best suit when the president as well performs well? If you understand my question.
Interesting question.
Because this is coming before, it's not coming after.
Right.
It's coming before.
I'll give you some clues.
Okay.
You know, first of all, I want to establish that Dr. Bawumia, I think that, you know, for him to be sitting on the flanks, okay, and then all of a sudden he's called straight from where he is to become a vice presidential candidate means that he's an exceptional individual. There's something about him, because if you are not exceptional, you wouldn't be sitting at your corner and they'll come and call you that, oh, come and be and the party leadership will come and invite you to become a vice presidential candidate. As to whether he was given the opportunity during the 8-year tenure to show what he has in him is a question that is subject to debate. But if we look at the recent happenings in the NDC, where Honorable Dr. Atuforsen, just because of his handling of the economy, has all of a sudden overrun all other potential presidential candidate nominees, and is now being, you know, seen as one of the potential frontrunners for the NDC presidential candidates to succeed his John Dramani Mahama, means that the economy is very, very important. So it means that if the NDC is also going into this election, they should be looking at what the options that NPP is having and what they are also bringing. I know that a lot of people are going into the direction of, are clamoring, and especially that's why you see more of the outsiders, those who are not delegates, clamoring for Kennedy Agyapong, just because of the disappointment and the frustration that was meted out to them during...
Is it the party that is having an appetite for a personality like Kennedy Agyapong, or you think that's quite the temperature of the country?
I think that, first of all, as I told you about the fact that the quality of leadership is at one of its lowest level in Ghana, and as a matter of fact, in Africa. It's because their options are very limited. Because if we want to look at the quality of leadership from, as I told you, from the days of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah till now, we need very bold leaders. Mm-hmm. But when I say bold, I don't mean people who are loud or people who are uncouth, or no, that's not the type of boldness. We need very bold leaders because looking at the problems that we face in Ghana and in Africa, we need bold leaders who can really, bring in bold solutions to our problems. But unfortunately, if you look at the lineup of political leaders, I am yet to see if there is one that can assume that amount of boldness. But as I said, whatever decision that the NPP makes in this particular primaries will tell on the future of the leadership in Ghana, because in 8 years, NDC might be suffering what we call the incumbent penalty, and that is something that any party is yet to break. So the assumption is that in 8 years, NPP will be coming to power. It's
a different kind of regime after 8 years. It won't be the same president coming in. It'll be like a fresh start as well for almost all of the parties.
Oh yes, it is. But let me even state this. Even when His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was president for 3 years after the demise of Atta Mills, this NDC still suffered the incumbent penalty after 8 years. So it is something that we are yet to see which party is going to be able to break it. Because, you see, for example, they are having a very beautiful ride this first year. Let's hope that they avoid any scandals this second year. Let's hope that maybe borrowing does not start again because they have to fulfill campaign promises, and things move on very well. Then we might be able to have a situation where that NDC will avoid that incumbent penalty this time around. If not, it is something that is obviously going to come. And when it comes, the option right now is either Dr. Bawumia or Kennedy Agyapong. But I'm saying that whichever way it goes, it's going to be a whole new, total type of leadership, especially when it goes in the direction of Honorable Kennedy Agyapong. Bawumia is leading in the polls, but the dynamics does not...
The 17% is a strategic number, and it is needed for both sides, or it's not? It's not significant.
Yes, it's needed for both.
Who are these 17?
So mostly the 17 are also in very critical regions, like Greater Accra, like Volta, where Ken seemed to be doing well, like Western North. So if you look at the 16 regions, about 11 of them, let's say about 8 of them, Bawumia is leading with a very reasonable margin. About 3-4 of them, that is Ashanti, Bono and Ahafo, Ken has been able to level up to Bawumia compared to the previous 2023. That's the Akan regions. And then when you come to Greater Accra, yes, he has been able to level up with Bawumia also in Greater Accra, and even beating Bawumia slightly in Greater Accra.
We'll get to regions that are swing and what they can do to this entire numbers. But this 17 voters, we can do some predictions, right? I ask this because who are they? Are they first-time voters? Are they voters that are sitting on the fence? Are there voters that know what they want, but they're waiting for momentum because they want to be part of the crowd? What does the data say? So
there are voters that are probably, should I say, non-aligned. Obviously, there are voters that voted because about 99% or 90%, let's say, or 95%, I can safely assume, of those who are going to vote in this particular primaries voted in the last primaries. So there are people who actually voted the last time, but this time around, they are being a bit cautious, or maybe there are those that are non-aligned. Bear in mind that the reason why we've been avoiding the issue of prediction is that Ghana's politics is heavily monetized. And on election day, there are people who would vote for the highest bidder. So with
people take a decision on the day.
There are people who take a decision.
And this is this is the behavioral pattern of delegates, right?
Yes, the delegates.
Yeah?
Yes, because delegates, some of them don't get any positions, they don't get any, the only benefit they get for being delegates, for being polling station executives is through some of these elections. So we've seen situations where on the D-Day, the person who's able to, bid more is able to. So if, because money plays a very important role, when you want to go into this with your polling and trying to be very predictive, you might fail because the last minute can determine a lot. Bear in mind, we also have about 28% of the voters who said that they can change their vote at the last minute. It means that about this 28%
originally they didn't show where they belong.
So this 28%, no, they showed where they belong, but they are saying that they can change their vote at the last minute. So it means that there's 28% who might go to the highest bidder.
This 28, who were they choosing really?
No, it cuts across.
They make up for the 42,
that question didn't. Yes, it cuts across. So if I got your question right, whether Ken or Bawumia, whose people were likely to
switch on that day?
There are some of this information that we've decided to deal with some of the parties that reached out to us independently for some of this backdoor information. But yes, that 28% is there. So it means that the highest bidder factor also comes in. So that's why I'm saying that this might be one of the most fluid contest primaries that the NPP has ever had. And though Bawumia is seen as a front runner, it is very possible that Ken can pull in a surprise, though that would be a very difficult one.
So which of the regions are a make or break for Dr. Bawumia to still maintain the momentum?
Oh, a region like Ashanti region has one of the highest delegate populations. So his ability to, keep his lead and give a gap over there, because he's leading Ken in Ashanti region, but the margin is not
healthy.
Too wide. Yeah, it's not healthy. That's a good word. So being able to do a lot of the work in Ashanti region, damage and demolish some of the foundations that Ken has been able to build will be very, very instrumental because Ashanti region is really very big. Ken is very solid, leading in Volta and Central, and but the delegate populations there are not really that big. One of the other areas that needs to be looked at is Greater Accra, and I think with Greater Accra, we are observing that because of the presence of media presence is very high, and much of the work that is being done by Ken and the fact that the general population are clamoring for him, it's leading to it's yielding some form of result. So he has really climbed up in Greater Accra. So Greater Accra is also one of the areas that needs to be looked at. But obviously, Ashanti is a big spot. If we want to move from Ashanti, we should be looking at Ahafo and Bono, and then we should be looking at Western region also. But of course, Ashanti is the hotbed.
Well, what's the single variable that can change between now and the day of voting?
The single variable that can change now, the two types of people that need to be looked at are the 17% who are saying that they are undecided.
They're undecided. Then the 28 that say they can change their mind.
And the 28 that says that they can change their vote. And those are the very important key variables that can really determine who is going to come out of this. But as I said, it will be very easier for Dr. Bawumia to be able to win this if out of the 17%, he's able to get even 8% out of that. So with 8%, it means that he's able to just cross the 50 mark. And trust me, whoever is going to win this might not really win by a very, very wide margin. It will not be too wide. So obviously, Dr. Bawumia has a leading edge and advantage, but of course, he needs to consolidate. He needs to expand. Sorry, he needs to expand, and Ken also needs to, Bawumia needs to consolidate what he had because he had 61, and Ken needs to expand. To be able to, get to the finish line of 50+1.
So, I mean, last two questions if I wrap this conversation up. You say that most of the people that voted in 2024 are quite disappointed in the 8-year regime that we just left from the NPP. They seem to want to have an appetite for a different kind of leader. Do they not have appetite for a different kind of party? Why a leader? And why do they want to shift away from personalities and move towards the Ken kind of personality? What did you consider to arrive at that conclusion?
So I think that first of all, Bawumia, his association with the previous, like Nana Akufo-Addo, is not to his benefit. It's not healthy because there are still a lot of people within the party who are, very bitter about happenings in the previous government and how things were handled and things like that. And for me, that is the burden that he has to bear. And if ever he never makes it in this flag bearership race, it wouldn't be because he wasn't a good material, because he wasn't a solid person. It was just because he was a victim of circumstances. I always cite this example. I remember the last days of when he became flag bearer and Nana Akufo-Addo finally sacked, or let's say reassigned Ken Ofori-Atta, and Bawumia came into the scene and, had a fresh finance minister, and, they started, muting all these ideas and gold for oil and things like that. We saw the economy trying to rebound slowly into health. So it tells me that if probably Nana Akufo-Addo had listened to Dr. Bawumia right from day one in terms of the economy and gave him full charge, he probably wouldn't have had a bad showing as a president as he did. So obviously I know there's something in him that he can give to Ghana, but because he has become a victim of circumstances, just being the person to clear up the mess of the NPP, but when it came to decision making, he was shoved on the side. And he made himself useful by championing a digital transformation agenda just because he didn't have control about or say about what was happening in the economy. So I believe that sometimes people say that Dr. Bawumia says that, he has achieved, chalked a lot of milestones as a vice president. Yes, that can be true, but when it comes to the failures of the government, he wants to also wash his hands away from it or step aside. That can also be true because the economy, he didn't have much control, but he was able to make himself useful by championing a particular agenda. But with Ken, I am also very curious to see what he can bring on board because we almost gave up on the aristocratic leaders and we are all clamoring for a new style of leadership. But after taking a look at how Trump is being a bit messy in his leadership, it gives me some form of worry. But he's also an experiment we can try.
Okay. So your single, maybe your decision, or concluding this, you think that this election can get into a runoff?
Oh, a runoff is something that's definitely on the table.
It's definitely on the table.
Definitely on the table, yes.
Okay. Michael Donyina Mensah is the Executive Director of CenPOA. Thank you so much. Are you releasing another poll before?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Our intention is not to just predict anything. Let's let it flow. Maybe we'll start looking at something with NDC when the time comes. I look forward to that. Thank you so much. Well, in wrapping the show, I'd like to remind you that First Sky Group invites the public to its 23rd Thanksgiving service themed proclaiming the mighty deeds of the Lord, Psalm 71:15-16, hosted by founder and executive chairman Mr. Eric Sedikutoche. Activities begin with an all-night service tonight, January 23, 2026, at Trinity Temple Assemblies of God, Tema. The main Thanksgiving event takes place on Sunday, January 25, at the Accra International Conference Center, featuring Reverend Dominic Yeo as guest speaker. Apostle General Sam Kranchi is chairman, and His Excellency John Dramani Mahama as special guest of honor, administration in music by Kofi Owusu Pepra. You do not want to miss that one. Join the First Sky Group in thanking the Lord for 23 years of running business in this country. Thank you so much for joining us today on the show. My name is Emefa Akosua Adeti. I definitely did this with the Ahanta Pele. See you next week.